Hi, close friends. Today we're diving deeper into the Remembrance palette from BYREDO as promised from my original video, and also covering some updates with the Mercier Real Flawless, the most recent addition to the collection, Pat's Divine Bronzer. One standout thing about this bronzer that I didn't mention in my original video is you cannot tell how this bronzer will appear just by looking at the pans. For instance, Bronze Nirvana, I don't know if you can detect the yellow tone just from the pan, right? Maybe you can after it's swatched, but it's one of those things that I mentioned about Natasha Denona's matte found in her gold eyeshadow palette, to detect the undertones from seeing the mattes themselves and then applying them on your lid. You're like, oh, I would not have predicted that. And many of you had said, look, Bronze Divinity is pretty. I'm gonna wait until that becomes available during the Sephora Spring Savings event. Don't want to pay full price for it. And I'm not sure either. After having Remembrance, I don't know if I want to go for Venetian Sunrise. Maybe I'll be wooed by, again, the discount. We shall see, but I wanted to dive back into this palette again. I used it over the weekend, and my goodness, I think it was this metallic here. I failed to use this as a standout lid moment in my original video, and the softness of these metallics makes it so upon application, you'll have to work it onto the lid. But once it settles, the texture melts and it has this beautiful twinkle effect while remaining soft at the same time. And I think, again, advantageous for those who have texture on the lids but want to take advantage, want to be a part of that twinkle moment without the chunk, without the heaviness. Something I also found that exists in Viseart metallics, and the appeal behind using that type of a formula versus, like, let's say melt. The same thing goes with the consistency of the mattes, soft, blendable. You don't have to put much effort into blending these textures whatsoever. And something I also observed is just limiting the use of several mattes at once and embracing the actual colors each matte has to offer. I love going in with multiple mattes at once. You know me, creating all the gradients. But I think there's something to be said to just limiting how many you combine so we can have like a fully coral moment, a fully rose moment, or something in between. So let's get into that now. We'll be a little more minimalist in our approach with how we tackle the palette today in this video, especially if you have it and you're stumped. You see the 18 shades in person, you're like, oh no, what do I do now? So with that said, fam, I think it's time for you to get in a little closer. That's enough. Also, as reference, I do have the Mercier on, as well as the Pat Mcgrath Divine Bronzer in both shades Desert Glow and Bronze Nirvana. I found that when I apply Desert Glow first, it serves as a nice kind of toasty foundation for Bronze Nirvana to lay on, because I know BN is very yellow, and having that on top of Mercier's ginger kind of dials down the yellowness a little bit, because Pat's Medium 17 from her Skin Fetish foundation with Bronze Nirvana, I'm sure you could detect in my original video, really made me warm, and that's not a problem whatsoever. But if you're around my skin tone and you have Bronze Nirvana, you're not crazy about the yellowness, I would recommend that you mix and match the bronzers if you happen to have purchased the duo, or apply on a foundation that has more of a neutral undertone, but that's not going to make you look dull, you know what I'm saying? And on the cheeks, I have the Haus Labs Colorfuse blush in Hibiscus Haze. Yes. All right, let's prime these lids. Do I want to use a concealer? I don't know. I'll start off first with Danessa's primer. Probably have to move to concealer as I remove and apply. My lids do become dry after maybe removal round 2. And this doesn't have enough hydration and moisture for my lids, because the corners get very dry, and that makes it tough for eyeshadow to stick on there. So to not do a disservice to the BYREDO, okay? I would like to go in with the coral first. You know what, actually, I want to stick here. I want to go in with this shade. I mistakenly classified this as a taupe. Clearly, this is not a taupe shade, Alicia. It's more of a warm beige, and I think it aligns well with the other shades in here. Taking Sonia's Jumbo Blender because I want to tap in this shade since it is on the lighter side. To bring out the color more, I think would be a better choice instead of me fluffing this through. An appropriate moment for that approach, I think, will be if I wanted to blend out the medium shades here, but if I just wanted this shade to stand alone through my crease, we're gonna pat it down. And again, they're so soft. I mean, no swirling and twirling required. Now with this bronze shade, ooh, so beautiful. Whipping it across the lid. I think there's something to be said about truly appreciating a more simplistic approach. Ultimately, I think for many makeup wearers, you want to enter your application experience with some ease, with some comfort to know that whatever you choose to use, it's going to be a seamless experience. You don't have to worry about eyeshadow appearing muddy, uneven, just you can go in with the confidence I think warranted from a solid formula such as what's presented here in Remembrance. Whip whatever shadows you want on your lids with minimal effort, and the look is gorgeous. Look at that. I love the shine of this color. Ooh. And now taking the dark brown here, whipping it across the lash line to provide a little more intensity where you most definitely can apply liner instead. My first choice, of course, as you know, will be black coffee. I ordered 2 pencils from Pat's latest spring sale because they were in stock, and I just know in my heart that is the only brown pencil I will use long term. So that's why I bought 2. Where do we leave off? Yes, the dark brown shade across the lash line as a little soft, intense addition to the entire eye look. What can we do on the lower lash line? Well, we can leave it bare. That is a fine choice. I think, however, nice to place this bronze color across. You can opt for the matte instead. I like a little shine under the lash line. And for the inner corner, because we're in neutral ground here, we can choose this shade, which does have a light pink flip to it. The gold is going to serve a stronger serving of color, right? A heavy yellow gold tone. Or we could go here. I think I'm gonna, the lavender is pretty. Even though it doesn't have the same shine as these textures here, I just think that luminous finish to the color and how it appears on the skin is just lovely. You see that? So it delivers the right amount of highlight without it being overwhelming, because I think the overall tone of the look is just to appear soft. Off to the second eye, using same jumbo blender, but now relying on this coral shade. So to have a juxtaposition between the two, right? We went super soft on this side and now a little more vibrant here, still from the same palette. This shade might appear more vibrant, but I think in the grander scheme of coral shades, this still has is a little more muted, right? It doesn't have like that same vibrancy that you might find in another palette, but you still just want that color. You still want the experience. And as you see, I'm just tapping here, and lo and behold, I failed to properly wipe my brush from using this metallic, and there is some of that color lingering here. Because the texture is so soft, I don't even mind. It works. It's fine. You have a little bit of shiny here, but it doesn't disrupt the blend. It doesn't appear textured on my lid's crease. It's fine. We're gonna leave it just like that. Tapping a little bit here now on the outer corner. Nice bracket to create with this same matte shade. Man, I just can't get over these mattes. If you wanted, you can keep this as is or invite the dark brown here on the outer corner, right? Let me first apply this shade, which takes on a similar feel to the matte we applied initially. We're getting sunrise vibes, okay? This is more of a copper tone. Ooh, that's lovely. Nice to place it with that more coral matte. And this time, I think taking the lighter pink, or we could do the gold. I'm gonna do the gold. No, wait, hold on. Let's do the pink first, and then sprinkle a little bit of the gold on top of the copper. And to achieve that effect, I think best to tap with a finger, because look at that. It brightens the center, but you still see the copper color applied first. The texture is so soft. You'll get the shine without the overwhelming layering risk, right? My skin still appears like itself. The lids don't appear heavy. Oh, and then pulling this lighter pink shade here on the lower inner part. That's absolutely gorgeous. So I wanted to stop here and just show, look, you could go soft or even omit the dark brown liner moment, have just this as copper. But if you wanted to toast up the look, taking my same jumbo blender, should I do, you know what? Picking a smaller brush. I want to have a little more precision here. So, you know what? Changing again. My Sonergy Traditions series, this is the S2 brush. Picked up the dark brown shade. Tapping right here. We just want to tap. We don't want to do anything else. Keeping the color tight to the outer part of the lid, and then using the soft tip of the brush to pull the remainder through. So if you wanted a little more depth to this coral moment, you can bring in that dark brown shade, right? So that's going to change the look for sure. And if you wanted to stay consistent, apply a little more here on the lower part of the lower lash line. Let's apply some lashes and I'll be right back. Here is our first round, taking it simple initially with our first eye, inviting that beautiful warm beige matte through the crease, relying on the bronzy metallic on lid, and then taking in our brown matte across the lash line. On the second eye, we started off with just the coral matte, putting in that copper metallic and also sprinkling a bit of that gold shade on the center of the lid. And then if we wanted to change it up, we can apply that dark brown on the outer corner. And again, it was just simple for both eyes. And I think that's what I adore about BYREDO palettes, specifically the 18 pan format. The formula allows just for an easy experience, but those end looks are not going to appear too shabby. Okay, and on the lashes, I have the Ardell Naked Lashes in 420. I think these are a perfect style for the looks we achieved, keeping it soft with the shadows as well as the lashes. And Suku's lip wrapping treatment is on the lips in shade 02. I can't get enough of this product. All right, round one complete. Let's come back here for round number two. Maybe now with the more rose tones. And in my original video, I said pink. I feel pink might be the overarching color to describe different tones of pink. I do consider rose to be a type of pink with a warmer hue to it. Maybe starting with the more medium rose, and in the same fashion, let's tap this on the inner and outer parts of the lid. And as an update, I switched to my LYS concealer as my lid primer, because we are already entering dry lid territory and I didn't think it a wise move to use the Danessa primer. That's best if I start with fresh lids, ones that have not been wiped with Bioderma, you know, so we could get a little more stick. So I think you can detect a difference immediately with the more rose medium tone versus the more coral versus the softer, warmer beige that we used in the first round. And this is where I feel the palette shines. If you truly want to appreciate the different mattes and the different tones of mattes here, I do think it's best to use them solo with an accompanying metallic shade that's similar in tone or has the same undertone. Okay, so these two, although on camera they look different, in real life, I think this is more the rosy tone. So going in with this one, in the same manner as I did with the medium rose shade, this has a little more brown to it, yeah, which is, for me, I think my favorite matte out of the entire Remembrance palette. Rosy browns, my gosh, because I love Mia Brown 100%, but for it to have almost like a mauve-y rosy tone to it, I feel adds such lovely character to the shade where it can just do lovely solo. You don't necessarily have to pair it with a metallic because the color itself just has so many stories to tell. Pulling that under, yes, same thing here, pull it in under. So this is, as you see, a little more rose, and here we have a little more of a rose brown, almost like a rose brown mauve, yeah? And since we already set up both lids in the same fashion, I think we can now apply a shade on the center. Like I did in my first video, I do love to juxtapose the warmers with the cools. So on the rose side, let's take this more silvery bit, which might be a little crazy, but again, the texture is so soft, it's fine. And what we can do, you know, maybe we can first plop down the silver and then go over here to this pink, and over the silver goes the pink from in to out, and I'm tapping around the edges of the silver, bringing that higher towards the crease, and just look what that did. Okay, we still have the silver, but bringing in the pink, anchored it down, you know, it was the invitation to the rose party. And just taking a little more of the rose matte here through the crease. Yes, I love that. And I do want a heartier serving of the rose matte here on the lower lash line, and also want to kind of whip out the color out more from the edge of the lash line. Like, this can travel a lot more without it appearing too heavy on that part of the face. Inner corner, I love the silver. You know I love the silver, or rather I love the lavender shade. Actually, what I want to do is place this color here, this more hot pink moment on the inner lower lash line, and have it trail over the rose matte. And for inner corner, I can't help it, I love this lighter pink shade. I think it's fitting. And if I wanted, I could take a little bit of, whether it be this one that we applied on the lid, or taking a light tap of the more sparkly arcly. So this won't have the same base of color like this shade here. This is going to be our twinkle. It's almost like silver stardust right here on the inner corner. You can see that has dialed up the twinkle, the brightness. You could skip this step entirely if you wanted a softer finish from the pink shade that we applied first. And now for the rose brown side, we can go in with several ways. Listen, I love this shade. It's not going to have the same finish as the silver, but that soft kind of is almost like a burnished finish to this shade, which I love. You know, sparkly, arcly, stardust, disco ball moments are great, 100%. Sometimes though, just sometimes, I want something even softer than that with shine, but not as much twinkle. And you're like, are you kidding me? Twinkle all the time. I get it. I get it. If you're the type of makeup wearer who just prefers to have that vibe on your eyes 24/7, most definitely BYREDO Remembrance might not be for you. I think, however, if you're one to gold shade, to appreciate the softer hues, the softer textures that are available to us, they can have a role in one's makeup routine that I feel it just brings something different to the table. There's a little more sophistication, a little more softness. It's just like a warm spring breeze is what Remembrance is giving me, 100%. With a gold with the softer copper. Do I want to say copper? These, yes, are similar. Maybe this is more like an apricot. The apricot with the rose brown. Yes. And we can tap a little bit here on the outer edge, not necessarily across the entire lash line. Yes, if you wanted a little more depth. All right, lashes are coming on. I'll be right back. Round number 2 complete, and I'm happy that we juxtapose the truer rose shade against the more rose brown shade, just so you can see the, I know, nuanced differences between the colors. And I had mentioned this in my first video, when you start to layer them on the same lid, it's hard to make those distinctions. Overall, it just kind of looks rosy brown, and that's basically the reason why I purchased this palette. The rosy brown category of shades is by far, alongside terracotta, one of my most favorite shade realms in makeup. And again, to have them housed with the gold, silvers, lavenders, coppers, we got to get into this for the last round. And maybe for the final round, we can combine, but maybe bring a little more strategy into it, pairing this shade with that, or maybe trying the coral with the more rose brown. I think this is what we applied here on this eye, so we can go in now with that matte, pair it with the more beige. Let's see what we can get just with the pink. So we'll try some things, or maybe we can just rely on the metallics, because the softness of their textures makes it so they blend well solo without a matte. But I do love to include mattes because I think it just refines the look a little bit. It gives the gradient of the metallic somewhere to go and to live without it looking like it came to an abrupt stop. And I do think it relies, or it depends on the texture, so we could experiment with that. Maybe apply the metallic first, see where that leaves us, and if we feel that we need a matte, we could just add it. It'll be fine. All right, plan is set, so let's take these lashes off and I'll be right back. Last round, as promised, relying on the metallics. My palette's over here, excuse me. To set up the look first, and I think you probably have concluded already that a favorable type of brush to use with BYREDO's Remembrance is one that is I was gonna say chunky fluffer, chunky shader, robust plush shader, because the bundle type will have incredible pickup, but the softness of the tip will still be able to blend out the textures well across the lid. So that's why I thought this was a fitting matchup. And I think now, let's see here. I would love to go, you know what? I want to try the silver first, lavender, on the inner part of the lid. So it doesn't have that shine and glit. It has shine, excuse me. I would say it doesn't have the same twinkle effect, which is fine, because now I'll like to apply this more like neon-y pink shade that has more texture than the lavender shade, but I'm overlapping it so that the pink will appear as the more dominant color on the lid, and the lavender kind of has like that softer gradient that begins from the inner corner. And notice that I'm tapping and not swirling and twirling, because I don't want to experience any fallout. I want these particles to stay right where they are. So I brought that pretty high. And as I mentioned in many of my eyeshadow palette videos, to have your concealer brush on standby, this will be your eraser, so to speak. So you could punch down any color that traveled away from you. And I think, listen, we can stay without the matte because this doesn't look too bad as it travels beyond the crease line. It doesn't look too uneven, but I do want to use a matte here just to lightly finish the edges. And for that, I will rely on a squirrel brush because I think that will be a better, or it's not going to disrupt what we already have on there. So I'm taking the lighter rose shade just to soften the edges of that metallic here so it can look, or rather appear, more finished. And if I wanted, I can tap more of that shade on the outer part of the lid and just keep it lower, right? And not have it go beyond the lash line. Same color, or no, sorry. Same color. There was another idea emerging, but I decided to put it on hold. I think I'll save that for the second eye. Let's try the gold here. Ooh, that's pretty. I placed it right at the juncture between the lavender and the pink. It like brings them together. Now the inner corner, I think I'll continue using that lavender shade, and I'm gonna wrap it in and under the lower lash line. We got a little flex, no problem. Have your concealer brush or another type of complexion brush on standby, just so you can quickly erase that. I think I want to pair these shades together because in my first video, I applied the dark brown matte first, placed that on the lid. Maybe if we paired this metallic with a softer shade, it might dial down the intensity a bit. So let's apply the metallic first. This has a creamy texture to it. So you can begin first on the lid. And as you see, I'm pulling down as I don't want this to travel too far at the moment. I'm saving that carving, or rather want to reserve the blending for the warmer rose brown matte, right? So I carved it in this semicircle fashion. And now taking a brush that's not this one, the squirrel brush I use here. I need something with a tighter point to it, as I want a more, where is it? Yes, the Traditions series S3, I believe. Yes, this is far more pointed than my Z11. So taking this shade, because it will fit right where I need it to go. The Z11 is more so if the color traveled high already and I just needed to buff the edges at that point. Because I'm starting lower, I needed more precision from the brush's design. So the S3 is going to help. Look at that, I'm telling you. And now if I wanted, since I have the collection right in front of me, I can switch brushes, go in with that same color, and if I wanted to whip it higher, now I can, right? Because initially I just needed that first serving of matte to stay tight to the crease, and if I wanted to continue that gradient, the squirrel brush won't pick up as much as the Canadian, and it's going to have a lighter serving of color without overwhelming that space right below the brow. Taking this beautiful, I want to say wine. Let me know, close friends, would you classify this as wine? A wine metallic? It's just so lovely. It's more like, I guess, a maroon shade with like a red, like a copper sparkle, and going in just a little bit. So with my Traditions S2, taking that matte shade and lightly trailing the edges of that metallic. I didn't want to take S3 as I thought it would be a little too big, But listen, if you want like that heavy drop of color, you can totally go that route, you know, the hazy. A smaller shader, this is my Refer 28. Digging into this metallic and tapping here on the outer edges. Again, this is the portion of my lids that begin to get rather dry and where shadow can be hard to stick to. So just wanted to pat a little more color there. As for the inner corner, I think it'll be quite nice to, you could do the gold, you could do the silver. The silver would be an interesting addition to this look, I think. But you know what would be fun if we went left field and tried the copper, because I do feel the copper exists here in the flip. So why don't we do that? Oh yeah, absolutely yes. And if we wanted to brighten this up, we can tap a little bit of the gold overlay shade on the copper. So we overlapped with the more maroon wine moment. And here, let's take our Refer number 3 again, pick up a little bit of the gold, and right at the center here. Yes. Haha. So if we wanted that to appear brighter, we can definitely add the gold, or if you wanted to keep it more copper overall, you could just stick to that first application. And voila, you're done. One more thing I wanted to try before we apply the lashes is to apply this softer copper. I like that a lot, because if you wanted a little more brightness from this shade, so you can dial it more where it appears smokier and more intense by just having this color solo on the lid and pairing it with the dark brown matte. Or if you want to brighten it just a touch more, applying the softer burnished copper shadow on top, I think just adds a little more dimension to the color itself, where if you want the overall vibe to be like maroon, but you need a little more brightness, then you could go with that step. All right, promise it's time. Lashes, and I'll be right back. And we have arrived to our final round, and I think this might be my favorite, close friends, because I loved how we began the first look by applying the lavender on the inner part of the lid, overlapping it with that more hot rose metallic, and then bringing it all together by placing the gold overlay shade and then using the light rose just to give that metallic a little more fluff on the edges. It's like a beautiful springtime eye. And I'm not keen on using those types of shades often, but seeing all of them in action now, this is something I'll consider doing more often. And for here, you know, we got a little bit of smokiness, but it doesn't overwhelm the complexion, right? I feel it's still very much daily friendly, but if I wanted a little more smoke, that metallic delivers beautifully. So I am thrilled and happy with my purchase. It is expensive. It is $105, 18 shades, neutral colors that I have in my collection. But to have them housed in one palette with the formula that they come in, it just makes it a lovely experience to use each and every time. And again, why I'm on the fence about picking up Venetian Sunrise, although that is a smaller palette, is easier to travel with, and that softer beige matte in the palette with the darker brown, you know, it's calling my name. But then I have all of these. I got all of these shades. Might not be the exact same thing as Venetian Sunrise, but I can make a Venetian Sunrise happen from somewhere in here. It is living somewhere in here, most definitely. So hopefully, fam, this helped you. Again, if you purchased Remembrance and you're stumped, you don't know what to do, you feel that when combining the mattes, there's not much distinction, I do feel you have to take full advantage of the fact that you have 18 shades at your disposal. Use them one by one, two by two. See what you can create with just the more rose leaning, the more coral leaning, the more warm beige leaning. I feel from there you can have more distinction. Like you feel like you can create different types of looks and not just like the same old. And yes, you can argue ultimately if you were to photograph all the looks you created from Remembrance, they will all look similar, but I feel if you wanted to better identify the nuances, if you better wanted to just commit to the coral, to commit to the rose and the rose brown and whatever, all in between, maybe just the gold, maybe just the silver, that you have to maybe limit how many colors you apply at once to a solo eye. So that will be my suggestion, but let me know down below what different approaches you took when using Remembrance and how you feel it compares to Kalahari. I think perhaps maybe I can do another either live, I could do a live comparing Kalahari to Remembrance, or an edited video. You can let me know down below. I'm happy to do either. But that is it, fam. Thank you all so much for carving out the time to watch this and to be a member. I truly appreciate your support. Let me know if you want to see the Kalahari comparison on the next vid, or maybe you have another eyeshadow in mind for that video. I'll see you down in those comments, and until then, please take care.